Welcome back to the Pioneer Room. I'm your urban eco master. Alright, in this video, I'm going to talk about carbon ecosystems. Generally speaking, carbon is classified as either organic or inorganic carbon. And organic carbon refers to carbon from organic living organisms. And inorganic carbon refers to carbon that exists in the atmosphere or is synthesized as a byproduct of chemical reactions. All right, and but saying this to say that this definition is somewhat very broad and vague, and a lot of things are going on when it comes to carbon, and we are unaware, ecologically speaking, and this is mainly because we are locked into these two types of carbon that they're always talking about, organic and inorganic carbon. And when we talk about these two carbons, we never really break them down in terms of their their function, on their location. Now, since we are going through a ecological shift, why not talk about shifts in ecosystems and types of carbon? Now, in the literature, a more, or better yet, a tighter definition of carbon is being discussed. And carbon is now being described as a rainbow spectrum. Now, carbon is as we know, is locked into two groups, either organic or inorganic. This spectrum allows us now to classify carbon based on, you know, the function of that ecosystem in which the carbon is associated. Now, this allows us to not only identify these ecosystems, but we can also monitor them, regulate them, and raise our ecological consciousness of how we are impacting these carbon ecosystems. Now, let us look at the current rainbow spectrum of carbon ecosystems. All right, so the current spectrum of carbon ecosystems are green carbon ecosystems, and green carbon ecosystems are terrestrial ecosystems such as the forest. So your urban forest would be classified as a green ecosystem, and that ecosystem is one that we want to promote. So we must be able to identify green carbon ecosystems and give an example of the forest. So we want to promote these ecosystems and we want to conserve these ecosystems because they play a very important role in climate change as they can sequestrate carbon and lock that carbon into the soil and deep into the soil, which positively impact climate change by lowering the local temperature of your region, as well as improving the air quality and the solar radiation, via the albedo. Yes, but there is also another very important ecosystem, the ocean, that tend to sequester way more carbon than green ecosystem, green carbon ecosystems. And the ocean sequestrate what is called blue carbon. So these ecosystems have what is called blue carbon, and These ecosystems are very important as well because they pull carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, which impact climate change positively. And these ecosystems pull significantly more carbon dioxide than, you know, green ecosystems. The good thing about it is that these ecosystem also plays very important role um, in alleviating sea level rise and the movement of salt inland. Now there is also what is called teal carbon ecosystem. Now teal carbon ecosystem is referred to as carbon sequestered and locked into wetlands. So terrestrial wetlands tend to sequester teal carbon. And these ecosystems, wetlands, are very delicately balanced ecosystems and need, to be, managed and conserved, because they tend to easily release back this carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, as well as nitrogen into the atmosphere if not properly managed. So we have to, protect these ecosystems because teal carbon are very important carbon in the environment. These ecosystems tend to sequester the carbon from the atmosphere, lowering the temperature, and as well as lock the organic matter in place and preventing soil erosion. So these are the first three types of ecosystem: carbon, like I said, the green, the blue, and teal. And these three ecosystems contribute positively to climate change. And we want to promote these ecosystems in our environment and lobby for policies that, of course, promote, forestation, afforestation projects and campaigns, as well as agricultural projects as well, planting more trees and stuff like that. All right. Now, and these ecosystems, the blue, the green, and teal, these ecosystems are never, given the attention that they needed. So they were more, they were more monetized. They were more monetized and exploited because we did not understand blue carbon, green carbon, and teal carbon and their important role in the environment. All right. Now let us look a little bit more further. There is also red carbon, and red carbon is referred to as ecosystem carbon that is found in microorganisms, and these microorganisms are generally found in very low temperatures, like in the Arctic, right? In region where they get snow. So these ecosystems tend to have organisms that have pigments that tend to reflect red, and as the ability to, these organisms have the ability, microorganisms have the ability to absorb solar radiation, at a very broad range in the electromagnetic spectrum, but predominantly in the blue green, reverse in the green blue region of the electromagnetic spectrum. And when they do this, they tend to, cause snow melt. But this is a natural process because snow melt is necessary to release the minerals and energy into the system so that plants can pick up nutrient and continue to thrive and grow and etc downstream. So in the very in cold region, in the snow regions, in places like the Arctic, the carbon in these ecosystem is classified as red carbon. So these are red carbon ecosystem, and they tend to play a positive role ecologically in terms of nutrient release. But when we talk about climate change, um, snow melt has been reported on heavily in the literature, and these organisms contribute to snow melt and sea level rise. So they can contribute negatively to climate change. Then there is also brown carbon, and brown carbon is carbon that is produced from organic matter, that is which is the generally the green carbon, that when incompletely combusted, when this organic matter is incompletely combusted, what happens is that it forms brown carbon. And brown carbon, these species have the ability to enter the atmosphere and absorb solar radiation at very broad spectrum ranges, and tend to impact negatively on temperature, and trapping more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and exacerbating climate change. you know so brown carbon can contribute negatively to climate change. So this is a process where carbon is released from the system. So we want to promote carbon sequestration and not carbon release from the system via combustion. So so like red carbon contribute negatively in that sense, brown carbon also contribute negatively. And if you continue to push the combustion process of organic matter, it can form black carbon. And graphite is an example of black carbon. Charcoal is an example of black carbon. And you know char is one of those processes in which organic matter is combusted without oxygen in a process called pyrolysis to produce char. While char can be released into the atmosphere and be very, very, you know, have a very negative impact on climate change, we now understand that char plays a very important role in building soil health as well, which is an important medium for storing the atmospheric carbon. So that is a positive thing. But however, carbon that is produced from industrial processes, commercial processes, motor vehicles, tend to be the black carbon soot, the smog, from chimneys. And this is black carbon, and this is one of the most dangerous carbon. And this is produced from the man-made ecosystems, right? So it releases into the atmosphere, and it tend to absorb solar radiation and tend to hold heat into the atmosphere, and driving temperature changes, into directions that are negatively impacting ecosystem, you know, locally, regionally, and globally. So, and then a lot of black carbon is also produced when there's war. War is one of the next very important thing that produce um, black carbon, and the bombs, and the this type of crisis tend to produce black carbon that you know impact the climate significantly. So when we talk about types of carbon, we want to be able to identify carbon as a source, carbon as sinks, these ecosystems as source versus sinks. So when we talk about carbon as ecosystem carbons as sinks, let us talk about the green, blue, and teal carbon. And when we talk about carbon ecosystems as, say, source, let us make mention mainly to black, brown, and red carbon. And of course, black, brown carbon tend to produce via anthropogenic activities, and naturally we see where red carbon ecosystems can somewhat impact climate change in a negative way, right? But there's also another important carbon in the carbon cycle, and we want to discuss this carbon, in more detail in the future. But just to mention in this video as we wrap up, cosmic carbon, and this is carbon that is found in the gods and human beings, and mushroom, you know and mushroom and some other plants, plant like organisms. And these carbon tend to, you know not act as a source or a sink per se, but interestingly, these organisms actually control the climate, so to speak. But we'll discuss this further in the future in more videos to come. So thank you very much for listening to me. Wow, we've been here for 16, almost 17 minutes. I am out. I am your urban eco master. Thank you, and I'm coming from the Pioneer Room. See you soon. Bye bye.